What happens when the most dangerous player in baseball finally loses his patience? For years, Shohei Ohtani has been the symbol of composure. The man who carries entire franchises on his shoulders without ever raising his voice. The player who responds to impossible expectations with quiet, devastating excellence. You've seen him smile after strikeouts. You've seen him bow respectfully to opponents. You've seen him laugh off pressure that would crush ordinary men. But on that night, something broke. And the entire baseball world stopped breathing. There are moments in sports that you don't simply watch. You feel them. The air in the stadium shifts. The crowd goes silent before it erupts. Players freeze mid-motion. Coaches drop their clipboards. This was one of those moments. The Arizona Diamondbacks had come into this series with something to prove. They were aggressive, physical, and playing with the kind of desperate energy that makes teams dangerous. Their manager, Torey Lovullo, had built a reputation for fighting for his players, for pushing boundaries, for refusing to back down from any confrontation, whether it was with umpires, opposing dugouts, or the unwritten rules of the game itself. But what happened during this game crossed a line that nobody in that stadium had expected. The disrespect wasn't subtle. It wasn't a hot mic moment or a misinterpreted gesture. It was deliberate. It was calculated. And it was directed specifically at Shohei Ohtani. The details of exactly what was said are still circulating. But those who were there, players, coaches, reporters sitting close enough to hear, describe it as deeply personal. Not baseball trash talk. Not competitive intimidation. Something uglier than that. And Ohtani heard every word. Here is what you need to understand about Shohei Ohtani before you can truly understand what happened next. This is a man who has spent his entire career building a wall between his emotions and his performance. Scouts talk about it. Coaches marvel at it. Opposing pitchers are frustrated by it. No matter what is happening around him, a bad call, a brushback pitch, a crowd of 60,000 screaming against him, Ohtani steps into the batter's box like he is the only person in the stadium. That composure is not accidental. It is constructed. It is disciplined. It is the result of years of deliberate mental training that began long before he ever set foot in Major League Baseball. So when that composure cracked, the world noticed. After the incident in question, Ohtani did not simply ignore it. He did not retreat to the dugout and let the moment pass. Instead, something in him, something that had clearly been building, finally surfaced. He confronted the opposing manager directly. And then came the moment that will be replayed for years. Ohtani, enraged in a way nobody in that stadium had ever witnessed from him, took his bat and hurled it toward the scoreboard. The sound echoed through the stadium like a thunderclap. 60,000 people collectively held their breath. It would be easy to reduce what happened to a simple story of a superstar losing his temper. The headlines are already writing themselves. The highlight reels are already running on loop. But that interpretation misses the deeper story entirely. Ohtani's outburst was not weakness. It was the result of something being pushed past a threshold that almost nothing in baseball had ever reached before. Think about what it takes to provoke a reaction from a man who has faced the highest stakes moments in the sport without flinching. Who has stood on the mound in World Baseball Classic finals, with an entire nation watching, and delivered. Who has gone to the plate with everything on the line and been calm enough to execute. For that man to lose control, even briefly, the provocation has to be significant. And that is exactly what makes Lovullo's behavior so serious. This wasn't Ohtani overreacting. This was Ohtani finally reacting. There is a difference, and the baseball world understands it. The umpires understood it immediately. The ejection came swiftly. Lovullo was removed from the game without argument, because even the officials on the field recognized that the line had been crossed well before Ohtani's reaction made it visible to everyone watching. When a manager gets ejected from a Major League Baseball game, it is usually theater. kicking dirt on bases, arguing calls, getting in an umpire's face over a borderline pitch. It is aggressive, but it is contained. It is part of the game's culture. This ejection was different. Lovullo wasn't removed for arguing a call. He wasn't ejected for protecting his players or disputing a decision at the plate. He was removed from the game because of behavior directed at the opposing team's star player, behavior that the umpires deemed unacceptable by any standard. The stadium reacted immediately. The crowd, which had been split in its loyalties for most of the game, turned almost uniformly. You could hear it in the tone of the booing. This wasn't competitive energy. This was genuine disapproval. Inside the Dodgers' dugout, the response was controlled but cold. Players who had been relaxed and focused became visibly tense. Coaches who had been watching the game analytically suddenly leaned forward. The temperature changed. And then came the announcement that would echo well beyond that night. Lovullo would not be managing Game 3. A manager being suspended from a playoff or high-stakes game is not something that happens casually. The league does not make those decisions without significant deliberation. The fact that the decision came as quickly as it did tells you everything about how seriously the incident was taken. The message was clear. There are things you can do in baseball. There are battles you can fight, lines you can push, confrontations you can have. But there are also limits. And when those limits involve conduct directed personally and disrespectfully at another player, especially conduct serious enough to provoke a visible reaction from one of the most composed athletes in the sport, the consequences are going to be immediate and significant. Baseball has been wrestling with questions of respect and culture for years now. The unwritten rules. The changing norms. What players are allowed to celebrate. What opponents are allowed to say. The sport is in the middle of a genuine cultural conversation about where the boundaries are. This incident doesn't just add to that conversation. It redefines part of it. Because if Shohei Ohtani, the most universally respected figure in the sport right now, is not off limits, then nothing is. And the league's swift action in banning Lovullo from Game 3 suggests that someone in a position of authority agrees. After the game, Lovullo spoke. The apology was public and, by most accounts, sincere. He acknowledged that his behavior had crossed a line. He did not attempt to justify or contextualize what had happened. He simply said he was wrong and expressed regret for the incident. In the world of professional sports, that kind of direct accountability is rarer than it should be. Credit where it is due, Lovullo did not hide behind vague statements or deflect responsibility. But here is the question that everyone is asking. What did Ohtani say? The answer, so far, is something that tells you more about Ohtani's character than any statistic ever could. He has not responded publicly. Not a statement. Not a social media post. Not a comment through his representatives. Nothing. And those who know Ohtani well will tell you that this silence is not indifference. It is deliberate. It is the same discipline that makes him the player he is. He reacted in the moment because the moment demanded a reaction. Now the moment has passed, and Ohtani has returned to exactly where he always returns. To his preparation. To his routine. To the next game. Whether he accepts the apology privately, whether he has already moved past it, whether it affects how he approaches Game 3, none of that will be visible from the outside. Because Ohtani does not process his emotions for public consumption. He processes them in the batting cage, on the mound, in the weight room, and in the meticulous routines that have made him the player he is. Strip away the drama, the replays, and the headlines, and you are left with a simple sporting reality. The Diamondbacks are going into Game 3 without their manager. That matters more than most people are currently acknowledging. A manager's influence on a baseball game is not just tactical. It is psychological. It is the hand on the shoulder in the dugout. It is the pitching change made on instinct after watching a starter's mechanics shift. It is the lineup decision made in the early morning after hours of reviewing data. It is the presence in the room before the game begins. Without Lovullo, the Diamondbacks will be managed by someone operating outside their usual rhythm. Their preparation will be disrupted. Their routine will be different. And in a series where margins are this small, disruption matters. Meanwhile, Ohtani will wake up on Game 3 morning and follow exactly the same routine he always follows. The same meals. The same preparation. The same focus. The same quiet devastation that he brings to every game regardless of what happened the night before. That contrast, the Diamondbacks adjusting and disrupted, Ohtani unchanged and immovable, may end up being the defining factor in how Game 3 unfolds. There is a reason the baseball world reacted so strongly to this incident. It is not simply because a manager was ejected. Ejections happen constantly. It is not simply because Ohtani showed emotion. Athletes show emotion all the time. It is because of what the combination of those two things reveals. Ohtani is not just a player anymore. He is a standard. He is the clearest example currently active in any sport of what happens when talent is paired with discipline, preparation, and genuine humility. He is the answer to the question of what elite actually looks like when it is lived every single day, not just performed on game nights. When someone disrespects that standard publicly and deliberately, the reaction isn't just personal. It feels like a challenge to something larger. To the idea that doing things the right way matters. To the belief that preparation and character should be respected even in the heat of competition. That is why 60,000 people held their breath when Ohtani's bat hit the scoreboard. That is why the league acted as quickly as it did. That is why Lovullo's apology was necessary and why Ohtani's silence speaks louder than any statement could. The question going into Game 3 is not just about baseball strategy or lineup decisions or pitching matchups. The real question is this. Will what happened in that stadium, that moment when the most composed player in the sport finally showed the world that there are things even he will not simply absorb, change anything? Will it change how opponents approach Ohtani? Will it change how the league thinks about the culture it allows to exist? Will it inspire the players watching from dugouts and minor league clubhouses to think differently about what respect means in this sport? Darvish once said that Ohtani's greatness cannot be explained by numbers alone. That what makes him truly special is the consistency of who he is, not just what he does. On that night, even in a moment of anger, Ohtani proved that point again. Because even his reaction had a kind of integrity to it. He didn't whisper. He didn't scheme. He didn't wait for a press conference. He felt something, he responded to it, and then he went back to being exactly who he has always been. That is the standard. Game 3 cannot come soon enough.